Thanks and welcome. We are in 303 and we turn now back to Mr. Conrad's Unstoppable volume. And we are working now with lesson 19 called Pinocchio. Now, let's just pause for a moment in your journals and make a couple of quick notes right away. First of all, to the focus. You can see it right there at the top of the page on the right there. We all need self-discipline, right? We all need self-discipline. But I want to add really quickly that sometimes we learn really important stuff from the texts we were introduced to as children. Mr. Conrad is in fact going to take us there for a number of us, maybe not all of us, but certainly we're going to need to talk in this chapter about Walt Disney, and more particularly, of course, about these Disney films that maybe many of us were raised on. I've often said to my seniors that some of the most important lessons and information from texts you ever learned in your youth did not actually come from books and reading, but actually came from what you viewed. And of course, the Disney performances for a number of you were probably an important text. Let's turn to the text. Pinocchio. It was the first motion picture I ever saw. Mr. Conrad will report. It was also my favorite. My grandmother took me on the bus to see it that day. We went to the Majestic Theater in Reading, Pennsylvania. Some of these images stayed with me forever. The whale, Jiminy Cricket, Geppetto, the father, of course Jiminy Cricket, the little cricket that's the conscience, you'll maybe remember. And the Odyssey that would test the wooden puppet's bravery, loyalty, honesty. I'm interested that Mr. Conrad uses the word Odyssey. Some of you, maybe for the first time, if you're familiar with this film, will go, oh, you know, that's actually kind of interesting, because that film is in many ways like the Odysseus character. Tennyson will call him, of course, Ulysses. That is to say, this character that takes this long journey and goes through all these trials and tribulations before finally ending up, you know, back in Ithaca. Very similar kind of plot line, but some of you will immediately say, I can hardly think of a Disney film from my youth that doesn't have that motif of the journey, where there is some long journey that has to be taken with all of these challenges involved, right? Homer's Odyssey, the first of those kinds of stories in the Western tradition. Is it any wonder when it was first released on home video, I immediately ran out and bought it? Most people believed I got it from my preschooler. Nope, I got it from me. I use it once a year on a Friday for talking to students. I explained to my classes, Walt Disney was a genius, no question. He understood the significance of the master key, or what I call self-discipline. He did a marvelous job of teaching it through cartoons. I then play that clip to my class. Pinocchio befriends a roguish character named Lampwick. Together they head off to Pleasure Isle, a place with no rules, no discipline. It's like the spring break version of Puppets Gone Wild. Pinocchio's easily led astray. He drinks, he smokes, he plays pool, despite the warnings of his conscience, Jiminy Cricket. Left to their own accord with no discipline, all of these bad boys soon make jackasses, literally, out of themselves. They turn into donkeys, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this film, right? If not for the split-second heroics of Jiminy Cricket, of course, the importance of the conscience here is significant in the text, right? Pinocchio is destined to become a jackass too. I believe the message old Walt was trying to explain was simple. Without discipline, the master key, you too will make a jackass out of yourself. Look at it again. Without discipline, the master key, you too will make a jackass out of yourself. I then asked my students this question. This is an important one. Look at it. How many of you failed to listen to your conscience only to make a jackass out of yourself? It's an interesting question. Yeah, seniors read it and they can't help but smile a bit, right, when they go, you know, it's kind of funny how a child's film can all of a sudden turn out to be a very interesting word picture later in life. Every single hand goes up, of course. You're not alone, my young friends, for I too, Conrad will say, have a story to tell. It was supposed to be a story about roasting weenies. Unfortunately, all we got out of it was toasted buns. This will, of course, be a chapter to follow. Let's make some quick observations in your notes. Notice, first of all, the power of the word picture. Let's just write this down. This is significant. If there's anything we're trying to instruct in an English class, it is this, that the word picture has tremendous power to stay with us long after the fact. It's why some of us enjoy reading so much, because these word pictures are profound when we read them, because we can then in our imagination create those word pictures. But for film that we've watched, The minute, for example, if you know the Pinocchio film, the minute that I started reading this part of the chapter, some of you could immediately call up that image in your mind, that memory. 2, what is your favorite Disney, and now we have to say beyond Disney, right, film that teaches important lessons? What was your favorite? He says, Mr. Conrad says, Pinocchio was his favorite. Jot down really quickly, what was your favorite in your youth? What was the film of all films for you? And then quickly ask this question. Of the film that you watched in your youth that you liked the most, was there a lesson that possibly was ever taught through that film? Number 3. The theory is we're supposed to grow wiser as we grow older. I mean, think about how we understand this intuitively, right? So, for example, when you are young, if you are having a problem, you normally don't go to somebody younger than you. 6th graders don't go to 3rd graders and say, I'm having this problem, can you please help me? Think about what we've just said. That's an important observation. Normally, 6th graders, when they're having a problem, they don't go to 6th graders either. Now, every once in a while, maybe. But most of the time, 6th graders who are having a problem go to somebody who is older. Why? Assumption, if you're older, you're wiser. You know something. Which begs, I think, a really interesting question. 2-part question. 1, is this happening for you? Are you growing wiser as you're growing older? In other words, are you wiser than you were when you were a freshman? By the way, I'm not asking if you're smarter, am I? You may be smarter. My question is, are you wiser? And then, of course, the second question is an interesting one as well. Who do you go to talk to who is older, who kind of serves as a model of wisdom for you, right? Finally, the last observation, if mistakes were made, and of course, mistakes always made in our life, I think this is one of the challenges with the unstoppable for us as well. If mistakes were made, admit, right, that's an important one. Own up to it, in other words. Take responsibility for it. And then you got to let it go. You got to find a way to get beyond it. Because if you can't do that, the challenges for you, of course, start to build. Question. Finally, can you gain and grow in self-discipline in your senior year? I think it's a fair question to ask. It's a good challenge for us. Chapter 19 of Unstoppable, Pinocchio. Thank you.